confusion of responsibility that leads to destruction in your relationships and in your life and in the life of the person you're trying to help. Did you get that? That's the concept. Okay, one of my favorite verses. It says this. It's out of Proverbs 6, verse 1 through 3. My son, if you have put up security for your neighbor. Now, what does that mean? Basically, it means if you've co-signed a loan. All right, now I'm going to take it past co-signing a loan to the concept behind it, which is not taking responsibility for another person's behavior, okay, that you cannot control. That's the concept here. So if you have put up security for your neighbor, if you've shaken hands in a pledge for a stranger, if you've been trapped by what you said, in other words, you agreed to do this, and now you're ensnared by the words of your mouth, it says, do this, my son, free yourself. Since you've fallen into your neighbor's hand, don't even go to sleep. Go over there and get out of this arrangement. All right. Now, on first glance, it seems nice and loving, right? To co-sign a loan. And I understand, to the pure, all things are pure, the Bible says. And there are times when people do that. And, it makes things work. A lot of times parents will do that for, an adult child who's buying a house, and they might put themselves on a loan to be able to get them to get in. There's a strategy to that and this and the other. But I think what it's getting at here is there are times when people put themselves in the position of becoming responsible for somebody else's behavior. And you can't control that. So now you are responsible for somebody else's consequences of their irresponsibility. Now, forget co-signing a loan. I wouldn't want to co-sign a loan if a family member or somebody I decided to help, I would actually make them a loan, right? You can do it directly. You don't have to co-sign. You can do it in ways where you can actually hold somebody accountable. But in this instance, if they don't pay, if they don't show up, if they don't do what they're supposed to, you're the one that pays. All right. So think about it apart from money for a second. How about somebody who's not paying the mortgage on their own temper problems? When you've signed up to be responsible for somebody's out of control anger, all right? So what does that mean? That means at a family gathering or a party or in a relationship, they're not taking responsibility. They're not making the payments on self-control. And they lose it and ruin everything for everybody. And then the peacemaker, the placater, go, oh, honey, it'll be okay. Oh, don't worry. Oh, that's okay. No, we'll do what you want. Well, see, now you've become responsible for making things better, when the one that ought to be making it better is the one that's doing the violating, the one that's not paying the mortgage payment. See, that's what it means. You have become, I love that word in the verses, you have become security for someone else. See, security protects somebody. So now you're going to protect somebody from let's take an addiction, for example. They're not making the mortgage payments on their addiction. You know what the mortgage payments on an addiction are? Going to an AA meeting, or going to an SA, or being in recovery, or going to therapy. That's making the payments on my own mortgage, my own life. But see, what happens in codependency is people say, well, you don't have to make the payments on your addiction. You can just live out your addiction and I'll make the payments. I'll cover for you. I'll put up with the isolation. I'll put up with the depression. We'll put up with the chaos in the family. So it's maybe an emotional issue, maybe a behavioral issue. Maybe somebody's a flake and they don't work. We were talking before the show about we all have friends who, or somebody, excuse me, somebody who their parents enable them, adults. Maybe they come from, a wealthy family and they really don't have to do anything, right? And their parents enable that, as opposed to the rest of us who hit adulthood. And did you ever notice this? When you hit adulthood, the reality came and knocked at your door. Hello, I'm here. You got to pay rent. Hello, I'm here. I will never forget. I will never, ever, ever forget this feeling. It is one of the biggest wake up calls I ever had in my life. I was fortunate in that my parents did send me to school. My parents said, that's the one thing that we're going to do. We'll pay for your education. But once you graduate, my dad always told me from the time I was a little kid, he said, son, I didn't get to go to college. He came from a family that his father died and they all went to work early and he didn't get to go to college. And he said, I didn't get to go and I want you to go. He said, I've already put the money aside. If you can get a scholarship, that would even be better. He said, but I've already put the money aside. That's my job. He said, your job is to get the grades and to be able to get in and stay in. And I'm going to pay for it. Okay. Your job is to do the work. And then he said this, I'll never forget this. He always said, but when you graduate, I'm done. I'm done. You can drop by and I might give you a sandwich, but that's it. I'm done. And he was so clear about that. So clear about that. Well, here's the wake up call. I remember when I graduated and I decided to go to work in a psychiatric hospital to take a year off before I went in, to my training to graduate school and internship and all that long road. It's like a long road. It's 4 years of graduate school after college and then internship. And then you got a couple of years after that of gaining hours. It's about an 8-year deal, 7 or 8 years. 6 or 7-ish, 7, 8, I don't know. It took a while. And I wasn't so sure I'm going to sign up for that. So I decided to take a year off and work in a psychiatric hospital. Well, with a bachelor's degree, you can't do anything in a psychiatric hospital much. I mean, you can't treat patients, but what you can do. But I wanted to learn. So I wanted to take that year and do it. But what you could do with a bachelor's degree is I could get a job as an orderly. And so my first year out of college, I'm a college graduate, and I went to work in a psych hospital for $3.33 an hour. That was the minimum wage back then. Yes, we had cars and electricity in those years. Anyway, I know it sounds like a long time ago. It was actually. Anyway, so I had to work. I worked for a year, but remember what my dad had said? He wasn't going to take responsibility, provide security, as the verse says, for an adult. I had to do that, right? It is not easy to live on $3.33 an hour. And I had to get really creative about ways to do that. But I'll never forget this one moment of reality. And here was the moment. I had graduated. I was working. I was getting my paltry paycheck and finding a way to find food, and I'd do extra jobs. I'd go down, this is in Dallas. I'd go down to the there's a big antique market there, and you could go down and find work unloading furniture for antique dealers. I would do that sometimes. I built some furniture and sold it, and many times patients would refuse their trays at the hospital. You know, when the food comes in, they're on these big trays, and they say, "I don't want dinner," and I would go in the nurse's station to find dinner. So anyway, I made it through. But here was the big wake up call. I needed a new pair of underwear, or needed to buy some underwear. And I realized, wait, I've got to use my money that I've earned to buy underwear? That's not fun. See, I'd always had jobs, earn my own money to do fun things. But when I was growing up, I mean, my parents gave me clothes. Now I found out I got to work and use my hard earned money to buy underwear? That's horrible. Well, that's reality. And what reality does for us is it makes us meet those demands of reality, and then it grows us up. Very good thing. But see, if somebody has provided security for somebody, reality never comes knocking at the door. They don't have to pay the mortgage on that addiction. They don't have to pay the mortgage on that out of control behavior. They don't have to get an alarm clock, get out of bed to go to work. They don't have to worry about that immature pattern in their dating life. It keeps wrecking one relationship after another, or commitment phobia, or whatever it is. It can bounce around from fantasy to fantasy. But one day I'll do this, or one day I'll be this, or one day I'll do that. Because somebody is paying for that, emotionally, relationally, or in other ways. So that's your verse for the day. If you have become security for someone's irresponsibility, free yourself. And usually that involves a conversation. You know, every time you overspend and go do this and don't take care of your rent, and you call me the last week of the month, I mean, how many of you in that situation with an adult sibling or somebody, you're always bailing them out? Well, time for a conversation. Or, you know, every time you lose your temper and you hurt everybody's feelings, and the Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner gets wrecked, you know, I try to calm everybody down. Well, I'm not going to do that this time. You know, I'm going to leave or go somewhere else, or we're going to ask you to leave or something. So control yourself, or you're drinking, or whatever it is. So one of my favorite verses, don't become responsible for that which you can't control. You can't control somebody else's behavior. And when you sign up to be security for that, that puts the math of the universe out of whack. See, the law of sowing and reaping says that whatever we're sowing, if you go to work, you get a paycheck. If you don't go to work, you don't get a paycheck. Oh, yes, you do, if somebody becomes a security. If you got a relationship dynamic that you need to mature in, and you go to therapy and you pay that mortgage on that therapy, meaning doing the hard work, or you go to AA or whatever it is, then you reap health out of that hard work. But if you sow to, I don't want to work on that, somebody else is going to have to pay for that.